All right, Chapter 1, Petroleum Unit Environmental Responsibility. And this is Field Manual 1067-1, Headquarters Department Army, Concept of Equipment, Petroleum Operation, Distribution Unlimited. Um, all right, Chapter 1, Petroleum Unit Environmental Responsibility. The Army Environmental Division is to be the national leader environmental and natural resource responsibility for the present and future generations, an integral part of our mission. Scope of environmental responsibility. We must take the environment into this practical environmental stewardship. The definition stewardship is taking care of the property which also care of the right of the others. It must be operation without harming the environment. Good environmental stewardship that leads to take care of the soldiers and their families. Also save the resource vital for the combat readiness. Army has a huge task of reducing environmental impact of the installation units throughout the United States and the world. With context, the Army owns 20 million acres of land in an area of half the size of Virginia that show the vastness of this task. Each area of the daily operation has some effect for the environment. The Army renewing emphasis for the taking care of the environment, the petroleum water units there for the nature of the huge impact on the environment and critical for the leaders and soldiers of the units to follow the legal environmental practices, but doing so with the practice to protect the their health and the health of those around them, also prevent long-term environmental damage that can lead to fines and other legal actions. Environmental protection stewardship goals and requirements. The Army no longer comply with the laws. They want to be the leader in environmental protection. Do this, and the Army sets goals and requirements for the leaders as follows. Your goals would be to make sure operations comply with its standards, do not receive the notice of violation or fine, not following the local, state, federal environmental regulation, clean up installation, begin restoring all contaminated sites by 2000, prevent future pollution, reduce all hazard waste and toxic release, integrate the National Environmental Policy Act and procedures into all operation, protect nature and cultural resources. Her requirements. All Army actions require that they're able to be done with the potential environmental impacts of said action. All key Army decision makers and planners are required to attend the National Environmental Policy Act training. Role of environmental stewardship and leadership. The leader who cares for the environment also cares for the people he does the producing and eliminating the unknown due health risk and having resources for the soldiers and money vital to this mission. The training area of the excellent with addition training far into the future. Preserve cultural artifacts to save the future generation. Also teach for the basic moral duty of the soldiers, protect and preserve the United States of America and its allies. Environmental responsibility, personnel, all levels must protect the environment, including the soldier and soldiers, NCO officers, commanders, and appointed personnel, soldiers. Their duties are follow the installation environmental policy with the unit standard operation procedures, Army regulation, environmental laws, regulation, make sound decision everyday activities, advise change with command and technique of the ensure the environmental regulations are followed, identify the environmental risk of the individual's having task, support Army recycling program, report hazard material and hazard waste spills immediately, NTOs. Their responsibilities include always consider the environmental day-to-day decision, make sure the soldiers know the environmental ethic, train soldiers in good environmental stewardship, be committed to the environmental protection, identify environmental risk associated with the task plan, conduct environmental sustainable actions and training, protect environmental during training and other activities, analyze influence environmental on the mission, integrate environmental consideration to their unit into the unit activity, train peers and soldiers, identifying environmental effects, plans, actions, and missions, counsel soldiers' importance, protecting the environmental resolve of non-complying with environmental laws, incorporate environmental considerations in the Association of American Railroads, support Army recycling program, report hazard material, hazard waste spills immediately. Officer for the duties are build environmental ethic of the soldiers, train council subordinate leaders for the stewardship, seek advice required for the personnel training from the local environmental coordinator, lead by example, enforce compliance with the laws and regulations. Always consider environmental making day-to-day decision, make subordinate known to the Army's environmental ethic, train subordinate to good environmental standards, commit a subordinate leaders to protect the environment, and analyze the influence of environmental mission, integrate environmental consideration, unit activities include identify the environmental risks associated with the unit task. Unit commanders. Alright, the commander must build with environmental ethic in his soldiers. Commander set with the tone with environmental compliance, with the total responsibility complying with the applicable environmental laws for the unit. Complete the training with the subordinate for the stewardship of the council on doing that what is right. They must lead with the example to enforce and comply with the laws, and the commander should seek the advice of the required personal training with the local environmental coordinator, serve the environment, and is making daily decisions, know the National Environmental Protection Agency Act agency and has material has waste hazmat command as with hazmat command and efforts and spelling contingency command these subordinates environmental protection make sure off through the NCA NCO know the environmental ethics training to be given with environmental stewardship and responsibly offer the NCO the importance of protecting environmental resolve of the violating laws. Ensure officers within the NCO comply with the requirements of the reporting hazardous substance spill with them assure environmental concern with address throughout the training. Identify assets with environmental consequence of the proposed programs, activity plan, conduct training to comply with environmental laws, include marking of the off limits during the training exercise, discuss environmental concern with the during the brief of the meeting with the AARs, and establish and sustain with the environmental awareness training. Apply appointment environmental compliance officer for the hazard waste coordinator for the same person with the serve of the both position. Those appointments ensure they ever environmental compliance occur at the unit level to ensure that the standard operating procedure cover the environmental conservation, conservation, natural resources bill procedures, support Army pollution prevention recycling program, meet the report, has material waste spill with immediately conduct environmental self-assessments, internal environmental compliance assessment, meet the key installation environmental with a point of contacts. Appointed personnel for the personnel appointed for the command for the ship receive the formal training with the responsibility include acts with advisory of the environmental regulatory compliance during the training operational logistic fund the functions and serve the communication I have in the year of the environmental matters. Both liaisons between the unit and his headquarters were responsible for managing environmental compliance programs that can provide the information for the training requirement certification of the personal needs. Or the unit level environmental training program and the effect of the training program also personnel will carry over the responsibility of the training circular 5400 for the basic manual of the environmental stewardship. The commanders are unsure for all the personnel with the training with environmental issues and point of the environmental compliance officer has a waste coordinator, person with the environmental with the personnel with the makes of the environmental laws filed with the commander meet with the battalion S3 and S4 officers or the environmental personnel with the fine with the environmental requirements concerning with environmental training with the qualification units of the ECAS. Inspections include an effective of the unit with the common environmental program areas, how to avoid them. The commander also may seek to ensure standard operating procedure for the detailed environmental issues, then proceed with the unit must file with the training program shall cover the hazard material management, hazard waste management, hazmat command, pollution prevention, hazmat men, and recycling program, spill prevention response plan. Chapter 2, Safety, Health, and Firefighting Section. Testing.